Jane, thanks for being with us. I'm excited to be here again with you, Lawrence. It's great to see you. Hopefully all is well out in the UK.
Jesse, lovely to see you. And Jane, wonderful to have you on this podcast. Jane Bayler, we have spoken many times about menopause, cancer, estrogen, chemotherapy, and we just can't wait to learn more from you, Jane.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I certainly have my own journey, which is not going to be everybody's journey, but I think many people throughout the world have gone through what I've gone through. I'm pretty sure of that. So it's great to be able to share.
Can you just start off by telling us your story? I'd love to just hear what you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I suppose about 14 years ago. And I guess I was probably perimenopausal at the time. I didn't really think about it, but I definitely remember going to the doctor and they tested my hormone levels and they said that they seemed very high. And they said, oh, that's probably because you are perimenopausal. I actually think it might have been something to do with with the breast cancer at the time. So the form of breast cancer that I have was called lobular, and that tends to be detected late. So it's one day you think you're fine, and then all of a sudden you find a mass. And it wasn't like, a pea that turned into a grape and, that type of thing, which is the common conception that people carry around. Lobular is different because it grows in a different way. And as I said, it often seems to like mushroom overnight. So I discovered it. I went to the doctor. They said, yes, this definitely looks like breast cancer. And then, of course, it's just a roller coaster ride. You go along for all the tests, all the checks. And what I found out is that it was actually quite late stage when they found it. It was in 11 out of 12 of my lymph nodes. And it was quite a large tumor. It was above 5 centimeters and stuck to the chest wall. All of which means that my prognosis was not good. And I have to say that I am here today, alive, well, and thriving. And of course, that's what we're going to talk about. Never having had another relapse. I just want to inspire anybody who is going through something similar to just tell them that this is not a death sentence. It really isn't. Of course, for some very unfortunate people, it can progress to that. But for me, it carried many benefits, actually, in hindsight. I lead a much healthier lifestyle now, and I'm so grateful for every day, and I just want to live life to the full. So, yeah.
And Jane, if I can jump in for a second, and you and I have spoken about this previously, and what were the toughest parts for you, especially as a woman? You know, when you got told that you had cancer and 11 out of 12 lymph nodes and all those sort of things, what went through your brain? What did you think you were going to die?
Yes, I did, yeah, because breast cancer, most of my female relatives died quite young from breast cancer. So I was obviously worried that I was just going to go the same way as them. And the most frightening thing for me was the thought of leaving my children, because my children were quite young at the time and they were very dependent on me. And I didn't have a particularly, I had two fathers for my three children, but neither of them were. I didn't think that they could care for my children in the way that I could. So that was absolutely devastating. However, I didn't actually hold that thought for very long because I had the most amazing medical team. And they said, look, do you realize how much things have moved on since that time? And they said, most people do recover from breast cancer. And, obviously, depending on how early it is, the statistics change. But you have as good a chance as anybody of completely recovering from this. So that was great news to hear. And then I met a friend at the gym and she said, yeah, you know what? I had breast cancer about 20 years ago. She said it was a bad episode in my life. She said it went to my lungs, it went to my ovaries, it went here, there, and everywhere. I was like, what? And you're here today exercising? She said, yeah, you know what? She said, I was always in and out of hospital, but it's gone and I've been fine. And I was like, well, if that was the case for you, then that really inspired me. And I thought, well, maybe it's going to be okay. Maybe it's just something that I have to go through, but it's not going to be that death sentence that I originally thought it would be.
And when you heard that you had, well, actually, when you went to the hospital and you first heard that you had breast cancer, you mentioned that you thought you might be perimenopausal and that your hormone levels were high. Were you having symptoms of what you might now know back then were actually perimenopause? And was that confusing the situation at all, or was it clear that there was two different things going on?
I can't really remember why I went to the doctor and had that hormone test, but I think it might have been for hot flushes or something like that. I must have mentioned that there must have been some reason for them giving me that test, but I
Hmm.
can't actually remember what it was at that time. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know.
No
And Jane,
problem.
may I ask you something? And sorry if this is too personal, but you went through surgery and you went through chemo. And, if you could maybe highlight for some of the people who are listening to this who might be going through the same things, if you were perimenopausal, obviously GPs and gynecologists refer you to HRT. Am I correct in saying you couldn't take HRT?
Yes, I remember we did have a discussion about that. And because of the family history of breast cancer, I was nervous about that. So I didn't take HRT. I'd read that it raises the risk. And the thing is, my mother had actually, she'd actually been on the early trials for tamoxifen because of our family history. And she just always said to me, don't take any of these hormonal drugs, because you don't know what effect they're going to have. So I think I just decided against that at that particular time for that reason.
And when it comes to knowing that you have breast cancer, how old were you again when you went there?
49.
You were 49. Okay. And when you started going through that, was there anything about the well, let me ask you this differently. What sort of symptoms were you experiencing from the breast cancer itself?
Do you mean prior to diagnosis or after?
After, so you knew you had it. What was going on in your body? What were you feeling?
Well, I do remember feeling quite unusually ill and shaky. I just remember feeling, I don't know what's wrong with me. I thought I had a virus or something like that. So I definitely knew my body was telling me that something wasn't right. But we don't know, do we? If we have a virus, we can't self-diagnose, can we? But I definitely wasn't feeling great, I have to say. But then again, I wasn't feeling that bad either. I led a relatively healthy lifestyle. I was down the gym 3 times a week. I wasn't overweight. My diet was pretty good. It's not as good as it is now, but I was very, very busy as well with the children and work and rushing around and all of that. And I think, we women, we tend to just brush off these kind of feelings of being a little bit under the weather and just not very good and think, well, maybe it'll get better. I think we often do that when we've got a family and just very, very busy lives. And I think that was what I thought as well.
I think you women do that, Jane, and I think women are a lot tougher than we are as men. I think you girls really get on with it, and you sweep it underneath the mat, and you come back to fight on another day. And I think you're exceptionally tough. There's no doubt about it.
And that's
Yeah.
actually something, Jane, on our channels on TikTok, when we hear women talking about the difficulties of perimenopause and the symptoms that they're going through, there is a sense, and women will actually come out and just say, like you just said, that there's a sense like they have to just push through this, or they have to deal with it, or there's almost an expectation that they feel that it's their responsibility to go through this and just deal with it because they're expected to take care of everything and everyone around them, and they have for all of these years. And at the same time, what I think is happening today, which is interesting, and I'd be curious to know if you've seen this or talked about it or heard about it, but there seems to also be a movement against that, which is to say, I don't, as a woman, have to endure these things, right? I may have to experience them, but I deserve support. I deserve to doctors that are going to help me with this. I should be able to talk about this. I should be able to share the fact that this is hard for me. And there's movements out there and voices out there that are supporting this really important change, I think, in the narrative for women. Are you hearing that as well?
Well, I think in certain advanced quarters, let's just say, I think the menopause agenda or the perimenopause agenda is on the table.
Hmm.
Personally, I wasn't really thinking about it, but very, very quickly, the perimenopausal discussion became a breast cancer discussion. And then the conversations that I had with people and the biases that people brought to the table and all sorts of things, they were related to my cancer rather than the menopause issue. But having said that, the menopause treatment massively exacerbated the symptoms of menopause and, in fact, brought on a very, very abrupt menopause. And while I didn't find that the medical professionals were unsympathetic at all, I found that they would just say, well, look, what would you rather? They said it in the gentlest way, but, look, we don't have any choice. We have to put you through this stuff. I know it's horrible. I know you're having, like, with the tamoxifen, like terrible, terrible hot flushes, night sweats. I mean, it was just the worst. But what would you rather be, alive or having night sweats? So those are the kind of conversations I would have every time I raised some of these issues, which were definitely to do with the changing hormones that have been forced upon my body in a way to obviously kick out the breast cancer. But when you strip away estrogen completely from a woman, and suddenly, then you do get some very horrendous side effects because, estrogen is a very protective hormone, as well as being obviously a bit dangerous when it gets out of control.
Hmm.
Very interesting. And Jane, so the breast cancer, how long did it take, if I may ask, until you got to a stage where you were in remission?
Yeah, so it was quite a long process, really, because I think from the time they treat you, they just assume that you're cured. That is the way that it works here in the UK. You don't get any checkups afterwards; they just discharge you. So basically, I think the first thing that happened is I think it was the operation. I just can't really remember which came first, the operation or the chemotherapy. But anyway, I ended up having about 6 operations and over the course of about 2 years. So I had the initial mastectomy, and then because I was having radiotherapy, because the tumor was attached to my chest wall, I could not have an immediate reconstruction because it would not create a good aesthetic result. There would be dimpling and puckering and everything like that. So I had to wait really about a year and a half, I think, after I'd finished the radiotherapy for the reconstruction to take place. And then after that, I felt some pain in the other side, and I said to the surgeon, I want to do the same thing. I just want to, get rid. I don't want to have one real one and one fake one. I want to have 2 fake ones, and they agreed to that. So all of that was 6 operations in total, including things like fat transfer and all the sort of cosmetic stuff. But I got a fantastic result, and I will forever be grateful to those surgeons because they look great, and that's wonderful. So that was that. But then obviously there was the chemotherapy, 6 rounds of, 2 different types of drugs. That took about 6 months. And that was, so then I had an extravasation injury, which for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's when the chemotherapy fluid leaks into the tissues of the arm instead of actually going into the bloodstream. And it caused me to have a collapse of veins throughout my my whole arm. So that was a chemical burn from within. It was very, very serious medical emergency. So that was a nasty complication. And then, as I said, the radiotherapy. So I suppose all in all, it was probably about 2 years of receiving different kinds of treatments before they said, okay, that's it. You're fine, you're discharged, off you go. And I said, well, what happens? How do I know that I'm going to be okay? This is an obvious question. And they said, well, you will know because you will have symptoms, but that's what we do here in the UK. We discharge you. We don't see any reason to follow up or to have any blood tests or anything like that. If you get ill, you're not going to get breast cancer again because you don't have any breasts. So if you get ill and if you start feeling ill, the worst thing that can happen in a way is for it to spread to other organs, because obviously then it becomes stage 4. And by that time, you will know because you will feel unwell and there will be symptoms, and that's when we'll get you back in. But basically, off you go, enjoy your life.
Wow, that's incredible. So that must have felt pretty terrifying to just head off like that and enjoy your life, but obviously you are, and everything is going well. I've got a question for you, just to come back to something that you said earlier, because I hear about this so much, which is hot flashes. And hot flashes, I think, are probably the first thing that men hear about in menopause, or they associate with menopause, right? And I think a lot of men feel that it's like menopause is mood swings and hot flashes, and that's about it. And they don't understand what it's really about. But not only that, I don't think men, at least I did not really, and still don't totally understand what a hot flash actually is like. Like, what is that experience like? I would love it if you could try to go, take us back to what is it like to have a hot flash? Where are you? What are you feeling? How does it come about? How long does it last? What goes through your mind? What is that experience like?
Well, as I said, the hot flushes that I were having were, they were induced by the
Hmm.
tamoxifen. So how I experienced them might be different to how other women experience them. So I didn't go through a conventional menopause. I went through an extremely accelerated menopause as a result of the drugs that I was on. So essentially, it didn't come on slowly. I felt like I was constantly simmering. That is the only way that I can describe it. That my body temperature was like constantly kind of up and down. One minute I was hot, the next minute I was cold. I just felt like a pot that was kind of being boiled on the cooker. Sounds horrible,
Wow.
but it actually really was. It was just awful, and I felt sick all the time, and it was totally awful. And then at night, what would happen is same thing would happen. So you'd end up like throwing off the sheets, and then you get cold, and then you pull them back, and it was like hot, cold, and just horrible. And because I remember when I was in my 20s, I actually remember that lovely feeling of almost being cocooned by your hormones, those kind of sleep hormones that would come over you. And they'd feel like a protective blanket, and they just kind of wrap you up, and you'd feel warm and you'd feel really lovely. And I never ever had those feelings again. Never. Just that kind of nasty thing of like, it just felt like almost a poison, really, in my body. So it was very difficult. I was married at the time, and I think it was, I don't think my husband was sympathetic. I think he just thought, well, this is all part of the treatment. But I think he thought I was exaggerating, as I think a lot of guys do. It's like, why are you being so dramatic? Stop fidgeting, all of this kind of thing. It was just very, very painful and very, very difficult and almost impossible to get comfortable. So it was bad, definitely bad.
And did that impact your sleep, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really, really does, because if you think about it, it doesn't stop at night, it gets worse. So if you're feeling like hot and then cold, then obviously if you're cold, you're going to wake up because you need some warmth. And then if you get the warmth, and then all of a sudden the temperature, the kettle starts boiling, and you're sort of really, really hot, and you're sweating, then that's horrible. And then you've got to throw the covers off. And so, yeah, a lot of insomnia as well.
Wow.
Exhaustion was real. You were going through an illness, you were going through chemotherapy, you were going through this hormonal shift in your body at the same time. But at the
Yeah.
same time, day after day, exhaustion, followed by more exhaustion, followed by more exhaustion.
That pretty much sums it up. And as I said, because I didn't have a normal menopause, I had a chemically induced menopause. It wasn't the breast cancer that was giving me the bad feelings, the symptoms, because my breast cancer was being treated. It was the combination of the medication, in particularly. Look, the radiotherapy wasn't too bad, but the hormonal medication, and obviously the chemotherapy was very bad. The chemotherapy was just what you have to go through, and I think it's generally improved from the past. However, the impact of the hormonal medication, which I took tamoxifen for 5 years, and I was told that I had to take this other drug called anastrozole, and I'm sure they call it something different in the US, for another 5 years. But the impact of both of them was completely different. And the simmering feeling, and the crazy kind of hot flushes, and the feeling of just never feeling comfortable in your own body. That's what I got with the tamoxifen, and that was night and day. That was like 24 hours. And the only way that I could actually tackle that was by doing things like yoga and Pilates, which I did feel helped, Pilates in particular. So I noticed it got a lot worse with stress. So obviously you do like nice slow Pilates class in a beautiful place, you're lowering your stress levels. So that did help a bit. But the anastrozole, and as I said, I think they have a different brand name for it in the US, was the worst. And would you like me to share the symptoms of that?
Yes, go ahead.
Jane. We're here. We want to learn from you.
Okay, so with that, it wasn't the same as I was very relieved to finish the tamoxifen and all those kind of horrible side effects that went with that, the simmering. And once I was off that, they just went completely. It's like, oh, thank God for that. I'm so relieved, pleased, happy that I don't have to take this stuff anymore. With the anastrozole, the first thing that I noticed was this is like chemical castration. That is the thing that I noticed immediately because, I'm a heterosexual female, and I noticed that I was looking at men like neuters. I know that sounds really weird, and maybe nobody can actually imagine what that is like. But, I'm somebody that I would always, we have a sense of our own sexual identity. So, whoever you're attracted to, you look at somebody and you think, oh, they're hot, they're attractive or whatever. And it was like a mask came down. It was like they're just creatures. Like everybody's just a creature, male or female. I don't have that feeling anymore. No sexual interest, no sexual desire, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that was very, very weird. It was a very disturbing experience. So anyway, I actually was sufficiently disturbed by this to go to the oncologist and say, look, something's happened to my sex drive. I haven't got it anymore. I don't even fancy men anymore. What is wrong with me? And they said, he was lovely. All of the medical team were lovely. They said, you know what? Women often don't talk about this because they feel ashamed or they feel embarrassed. They said, we do think that this is a side effect of this medication, but we can't really take you off this medication. And I said, well, I don't want to be on it for much longer. I can do 2 years max. And they said, okay, do 2 years. And they said, once you've got 2 years under your belt, you will have got the bulk of the benefit from it. So forget about the other 3 years. If you're willing to take the risk, then the side effects will go away. So I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I stayed on the anastrozole for 2 years. but I still feel that the effects of that lasted. And I don't know. I don't really know why. Not to the same extent, but I didn't feel when I stopped taking it. It wasn't like, oh, all of a sudden, the world has burst into Technicolor again, and I really see all these incredibly fanciful men all around and all of that. No. So I feel as though it had a lasting effect, but again, what the medical professionals say is, you're alive. And isn't that wonderful? And it's true. I'm alive and it's wonderful. And that's just the most precious gift of all, of course.
Did your medical team give you any, heads up when you started taking these drugs that it was going to induce these menopause symptoms immediately? Did you have any warning?
No, no, they didn't tell me. I know, I'm sure that it is probably different in the US. Obviously, the US medical system is not the National Health Service here in the UK. And I think you probably get a higher level of information and care. But, here, obviously, it's very under-resourced. And although I was definitely a priority, I was seen as a priority. At that particular time, I didn't feel as though, I felt as though the side effects were completely ignored, really, underplayed. It was all about, well, we're treating you for this illness and we're going to do everything we can to get rid of this illness, and whatever else happens, well, that's down to you.
Hmm.
Wow,
Sadly.
you have been through a journey, Jane. You really have. And if I may, again, I'm coming back to something quite personal, and hopefully you
Yeah,
don't mind. But Jane,
no.
you mentioned your previous husband at the time, and you were married when all this started. Do you think he stood up and done what you expected a man to do? Do you think he could have done more? Do you think he was there to support you? Did you feel lonely? Did you feel unseen?
Well, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that it was obviously a very unwelcome piece of news for him, from many different perspectives. He wasn't really a great husband, to be honest. And if he was truthful with himself, I think he'd probably put his hand up and say, own up to that. But no, I mean, for him, it was, I think, very difficult, really genuinely very difficult, that all of a sudden I was having all these symptoms. And I think that he actually thought, like everybody else, that I was exaggerating them. And so he wasn't very sympathetic. I mean, he came along with me to the medical appointments, and I think he tried. He tried. But I think with the side effects, I don't think he knew what to do, because nobody was talking to us about them, or nobody was suggesting anything that we could do to actually alleviate that. They were just saying, well, it is what it is. And when you just get the message, it is what it is, well, what do you do? All you have to do is just, more or less suffer in silence. So that is really what happened, and it would be lovely to know that there are, that there are some ways of actually alleviating these horrendous side effects. Because, I mean, chemo was one thing. You don't expect to feel great throughout chemo, of course. That's like a chemical kosh. So that nobody feels that great when they're going through it. But as I said, it was really the impact of the hormonal medication that was designed to get rid of every single bit of estrogen in the body. That was the really tough stuff.
Do you think a man has got an important role to play when his woman is going through such a difficult stage in life?
Oh, absolutely, of course. The right man is going to be worried, concerned. You want to do whatever they can to help. There are plenty of really nice men and good husbands in the world, and they want to support their wife or their girlfriend or whatever. So I just think, with my husband, I think he probably felt very helpless underneath it all. And I think that is probably quite a common experience for men, because if they don't have the education, and if the message that they're getting is just, sorry, but it's just the way it is, then what can they do? What can they do other than be supportive and understanding? But at the same time, I think we have to acknowledge that the impact of menopause, or the impact of cancer treatment, or the impact of any form of kind of illness or disease. I mean, obviously menopause isn't a disease, it's a life stage, but anything that is really a health challenge can also be a challenge for the partner as well. And so they have to be willing to turn the focus in on themselves, get the resources outside of themselves, strengthen themselves in order to be able to be strong for their partner in new and different ways, because sometimes it's just not enough to just do what you do, and just dig deep and find those extra resources. You need extra support if you're going to be giving extra support, I think.
I think that's a great perspective. And to follow up on that, I think one of the things that men struggle with is even the good men that you're talking about that are out there that care and they want to educate themselves, they want to support their wife through this. I still think that they don't know how to approach their wife. So even if they have the best of intentions and even if they have looked into this, and even if they care about what she's going through, I don't think that a lot of them really know how to sit down and have a conversation because, they don't want to try to explain something to her about menopause, right?
Mhm.
But they need to be able to open up some kind of conversation to where she can share with them how she's doing and what she's going through. But what would you say to a man who says, Jane, I care about my wife. I see that she's struggling, but I don't know how to talk to her about this. What would be a way to approach a woman going through these symptoms?
Well, I mean, really, what we're talking about is just basic communication skills. So if you can't talk to your partner about X, Y, or Z, then you're not going to be able to talk to her about menopause. So really, it is to do with open communication. So I think, if there are sort of blind spots or sore spots in your relationship that you're not talking about, whatever it is, money, children, any of the big stuff. Oh, I fancy somebody outside the anything kind of that it might be a little bit of a touchy, sensitive subject. You have to be able to air those things. So, I mean, really, menopause, discussion about menopause or, breast cancer treatment or anything that is sensitive, medical and so on, you need to have that open, trust based relationship in the first instance. Otherwise, how can you find the words to talk about this? Because it is something that is not always easy for either men or women to talk about.
Hmm.
And when you get those, as I said, those tricky subjects, when you're not just talking about the children's school grades or the weather or what we're going to do this weekend socially or anything like that, then you have to work at communication. Both parties have to work at communication. It can't be a one-sided thing. So you can't be like the really sensitive male who really wants to help your husband, and then or help your wife, and then your wife be the sulky, grumpy one that doesn't want to talk about it. And I mean, that wouldn't work either, would it?
No, it's a two-way street. And I do hear that. I do hear that frustration from husbands sometimes saying that they do want to talk about this. They do want to try to have communication. And they're saying that their wife doesn't want to talk about this. And I wonder if that has to do with any of the shame that I think you mentioned earlier. If when it comes to shame in menopause for a woman, what do you think the source of that is? What are we talking about when we say a woman feels shame in menopause?
Yeah, well, that is a very, very, very great question, Jesse, because shame is endemic in our society. A lot of people carry shame over from childhood, and so a lot of people do carry around a sense of shame, whether they deserve to or not. And I think, particularly for women, we live in a very age and youth obsessed society. And I think perhaps women feel as though by opening up to their husbands that they're going to be seen as less attractive, as less kind of youthful. There is far more pressure on women than there is on men to be, to be young looking, and to be seen as desirable. So I think that is very much a part of it. That maybe if they just start to admit to these things, that maybe they think that their husbands will see them in a different light, and want to go off and find a younger partner, or cheat with them or something like that. So I can only imagine that that could play a part.
Very interesting, Jane. And Jane, you are of a certain age, and you've got a lot of female friends as well.
Yeah.
Do you girls tend to sit around and talk about menopause and talk about the way the husbands and partners are reacting to it?
Well, no, not really. I mean, if I talk to I a lot of my friends are single, because that's just the cohort that I've been in. So we when we get together, to be honest, what we try and do is just have a good time and have fun. So we don't really sit around kind of talking about you know these kind of challenges. And I have to say that also most of my friends are probably postmenopausal. But to be honest, I have never ever sat around and talked to women about menopause and about how it makes us feel. And
Yeah, yeah.
I
I'm
just don't.
pleased you said. I'm really pleased you said that, Jane, because I know for a fact you've got three beautiful young daughters, and when I say young daughters, that they're all in their 20s. So
Mhm.
if they're not hearing their mom and their friends talk about menopause, how does a younger woman learn about menopause? Because one of the things that Jesse and I have realized through
Mhm.
all of our questions and conversations that we're having is there's a lot of men out there who have got no idea, completely ignorant to what happens to a woman through this hormonal change. But that can also be applied to younger women as well.
Yes, younger women, as you pointed out, and I think I learnt this from you, Lawrence, that women can go into perimenopause quite young, and they can start having symptoms probably without even realizing what they are. And I think generally there needs to be more education out there in the marketplace. I mean, what you're doing here with the podcast is absolutely fantastic, because when they start to feel these symptoms, and I will talk to my daughters about them as I talk to them about breast cancer and, health matters in general, they need to have resources that they can go to. It's no good just going to the doctor, because, doctors, you get good doctors, you get bad doctors, you get busy doctors that they just haven't got time to kind of, really give you the attention and the information, the resources you need. So it is podcasts like this that are going to be incredibly valuable to really anybody who is experiencing menopause symptoms, old or young, at whatever stage they go into that journey. And they will learn and they will feel supported and not alone. And I think that is the big thing, really. It is just like, oh, this isn't just me. I mean, when I was going through my accelerated menopause with the chemotherapy and the tamoxifen, I mean, it was like hell. It was like a journey through hell. I just didn't know anybody else who was going through the same thing. I really didn't. And I was working and I had the children, so I didn't have the time to go to these. They wanted me to go to these support groups, and there's plenty of resources kind of out there. I did not have the time to do that. I just had to keep going. So because of that, I did feel very alone. And and a lot of women, they don't have time to kind of get in the car and allocate a morning or an evening or whatever to drive here and drive there. And even when you do, you find yourself in a group where perhaps you don't necessarily gel with some of the other people there, if they're all just there to talk about their cancer journey, you'll get all sorts of people. Even if people go to talk about menopause, you'll get all sorts of people. But I think the thing about having these online resources like podcasts and so on is you get the sense of community and of not being alone without necessarily feeling the pressure and the obligation to build relationships with people who wouldn't be your friends in the outside world. So I really think you're doing an amazing thing here. I really do.
We appreciate that, and I think in the comments that we see, women are saying, I think a lot of what you're saying. They use these online resources, podcasts, TikTok, and it's an outlet, it's a community, it's the conversation that they haven't been able to have elsewhere, and I think we're definitely seeing that, which is amazing. The one thing I'm also seeing, which I wanted to ask you about, is the mental load of this, the depression, the because you mentioned the loneliness. I've had women, many actually, in comments mention a feeling of a loss of identity. Like they feel like when that estrogen is gone,
Yeah.
there's a sense of I don't know who I am anymore. What is that something that you went through as well in your experience?
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, I do remember the feeling of estrogen, which was a really nice feeling. It's like this lovely warm blanket that you carry around you with you, and you don't realize until it's gone. When it's gone, it feels like everything feels like a cold, hard landing. I don't really know how else to describe it. So it's like something has been taken away. Yes, for sure. And that is, that is still difficult. If I didn't live the life that I live, that would be very hard for me today, because I go to the gym every other day. I exercise every day, and when I go to the gym, I work hard in the gym. I have an incredibly rigorous diet. I follow the what's called the rainbow diet, where I have to eat 8 to 10 portions of vegetables, fruit or vegetables a day. So I've been following that diet. I know, like Lawrence thinks this is absolutely horrific. I know, as a kind of southern hemisphere meat lover. But I've been doing that every single day since I learnt about it, which was during my cancer treatment. So the measures that I take a lot of supplements as well. So all of those things that I do are really designed to counteract the effect of just no estrogen, because I don't think I've got any estrogen in my body, and and it's still quite hard, but it does make a difference. And of course, the other thing that makes a difference is really just the emotional connection with other people. Just people to talk to, people that care about you, a sense of community, because there is nothing worse than going through anything tough in life and feeling on your own, right? So all of those things I think are protective measures, but they do not replace the estrogen. And look, if I could find a solution, and I'm still open to finding a solution. I heard about these bioidentical hormones, or progesterone or some. I don't really know, but if there was a solution out there, I would certainly be very interested in it, because I don't feel that great in my body, I have to say, even now. But I just make the most of it.
Jane, you've been on a hell of a journey, as we've said, and you're now post menopause, and I really appreciate the honesty that had, talking to us on this podcast. But the next 10 years, do you still feel your body is changing? A lot of women think they go through perimenopause, menopause, and then it's all over. They don't realize their body continues to change until the day we die. Do you think, as a woman who's now post menopause, you're just learning to accept that your body is changing? Or it doesn't sound like it. You're in the gym and you're fighting, you're eating all the vegetables and doing all those sort of things. But can you feel different stages that you're still going through?
Well, I like to think that, actually I'm getting healthier and healthier with every day that passes. So I genuinely believe that I'm almost aging in reverse. This is This is basically the belief that I carry around with me. And so I intend to behave as if that is the truth. And what that actually means in terms of how we live our lives is that we do have to do a lot more as we get older in order to maintain that same feeling of health and well-being. But I'm very interested now in the concept of longevity and what actually creates longevity. And my parents both had very, very long and ultimately quite unhealthy lives at the end of their lives. My father died last year when he was 2 weeks off his 100th birthday, and his last 5 years were not good. My mother had a 15-year decline through dementia, and that was not good. And so, really, I think we all have a responsibility to ourselves, no matter what we're going through, to try and be the healthiest version of ourselves. Because if we do that, and however we do it, we are going to feel better, we're going to feel happier, and that commitment to our health and well-being is going to help anyone, whether they're going through menopause or have gone through it and are going into later life, in my
And
view.
when you go to the gym, first of all, I think that's great advice, and that's a really great perspective. And it leads me to ask: when you go to the gym, what is the right in a postmenopausal state? What would be the right type of exercise? What would you advise a woman to do? Is it because what I've heard is too much cardio actually might not have a good effect, and that more resistance and strength training is the way to go. But what's your belief?
Yeah, resistance and strength training is extremely important for bone density. And I do have osteoporosis, and some of that came about as the result of the chemotherapy, I think. So, but none of these things are terminal. A lot of them are reversible, and I think this is the thing that people don't understand, that you can improve your bone density first of all by taking the right supplements. So I take seaweed calcium and K2 and all sorts of the right supplements.
Yeah, you're quite right, Jane. It's health is so important for us as we get older, and I do think you're right. In the gym, it is definitely strength and resistance training. Jane, I
Did
really
we?
want to thank you. I'm very aware of the amount of time. We've flown through 45 minutes very easily here, and I think the information that you've given us is so critical and vital and so personal as well. And I thank you for that. And I know Jesse will feel exactly the same.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and so glad to see you're doing so well. Did we lose Jane?
I think we've lost her. I think she said that we froze Jesse. So let me stop that. I think the